All right, so Ghost Story. This one I had been kind of told by a bunch of people that it was really weird and hard to get into, and I don't know, people made it sound really, really strange. And I mean, I get it. And by the way, this is spoiler filled if you haven't watched my Dresden reviews. I get it. Harry's dead, so yeah, it's a little weird. But other than that, it kind of read like a Dresden Files book. It still follows a lot of the same, comedic beats, story elements, things like that. So I didn't think it was honestly all that weird, other than the fact that Harry is a shade for most of the book. So let's talk about Ghost Story. So I had been wondering, since each Dresden book takes place, it's like a year has passed pretty much every time. So obviously all these characters are getting older. You see, Daniel, Molly, all these, younger characters in the series are adults now. But I was wondering at the end of Changes, where Harry dies, how long it was going to be before this book begins. Because I read Aftermath, the short story in Side Jobs, right? Was it Side Jobs? Briefcases? Whichever one it was. And that was a cool story about, Karen and Will fighting the Fomor, being in denial about Harry's death and trying to figure out what was going on with this sort of like side story. But it's a good introduction to what they're doing following the event of Harry's death. But we see that this is 6 months after the conclusion of Changes, so it's not that long, but it's definitely long enough for things to happen. Changes left a massive power vacuum with all these, villains of this world, and Chicago being what it was, it's really protected by Harry. And I don't think he quite understood. Sorry, my phone's vibrating. I don't think he quite understood the impact that he had on Chicago and how many people were terrified of him, which is what he learns during this book. So I'm not going to go through the entire book. I never do, but there's a lot of things that happen throughout that I really want to touch on. So this book does a fantastic job, and which is why I love it, is you really get to feel that impact of losing Harry Dresden in this world, whether it be from somebody like Marcone or, Karen or Molly, especially just everybody that was impacted by Harry's life and, protected him or was protected by him, were friends with him, intimate relationships, whatever it was, he meant a lot to a lot of people. So not having him there, and with a power vacuum left by the Red Court being destroyed, bad things are going to happen. And now you don't have like the guy there to defend you. So naturally someone's going to step in and either start defending Chicago and or trying to take it over. So in the very beginning of this, when Harry kind of learns that he's sort of in like an in-between state, he's not quite dead, really, but kind of is. There was some kind of weirdness to his death, basically, that kept him alive. And obviously you learn at the end that Mab wasn't going to let him go that easily. You have Harry as a shade, and he talks to Karen's dad. He talks to, what's his name? He talks to the guy whose name I literally knew 5 seconds ago that I'm now forgetting, that died back in book 2. I want to say McCoy, that's not even right, but I'll put his name right here because I can't remember. And he's sort of being explained to like what's going on with his life and how he's being sent back to solve his own murder. So even in death, Harry is not allowed to stop solving cases. And essentially, he must do this, otherwise 3 people close to him are going to be severely hurt. So obviously, people's lives are still on the line. He needs to get back and figure out what happened. And Jim Butcher brilliantly has him communicate with people through Mort. And Mort being not taken seriously by anybody, we have this great scene with him and Murphy when he's like, look, I don't want to be here. Harry's telling me to talk to you. And she's just like, shut up, get out of here. Why would you do this to me? Like, I'm going to give you 5 seconds to get away from me. He was like, Harry wants me to tell you that this. And she's just like, are you really talking to Harry right now? He's just like, I don't know how else to convince you. And then Harry's like feeding him lines, like say this. And finally convinces her enough to actually talk with him. And they have this whole like get together with Molly, who we learned is basically like the Joker now. She leaves calling cards on all the bodies that she kills. She has basically just become this like anti-hero in the city of Chicago and just taking matters into her own hands because of that power vacuum that we were just talking about. there's a lot of baddies that came to Chicago in the wake of Harry's death. So she has taken it upon herself to be that vigilante that Chicago needs to sort of ward off all these villains, but it's kind of driving her crazy, and she's like running herself down, basically. You just really see how, like, Karen was essentially a love interest of Harry and very good friends with him, and you see her mourning his loss and not really coming to terms with the fact that he might actually be gone. And then you see Molly, who, you know, apprentice, sort of looked up to Harry at one point, or like a really good friend, to the point where she, you know, loved him and wants to be with him, and like through their soul gaze and everything about the relationship, you see that it really took a toll on her to have Harry gone. And then we learn even more about their their relationship and what the hell happened toward the end of the book, when you have that scene where they're talking about what actually happened, which was Harry, you know, set this all in motion himself to try to get out of being the Winter Knight with Mab and, you know, leave things behind for the people that he cares about. And he actually had Molly basically wipe his memory, which, I mean, it's just everything that he's done kind of destroys Molly. Like, it's really sad to see what Molly's going through. And he had, you know, cashed in his favor with Kincaid to kill him, and Molly pulls out that memory from his brain so that he doesn't know what's going on when he gets shot at the end. It changes. But just the fact that Molly had to do that, and Molly's constantly telling Harry, like, dude, you understand that I'm in love with you, right? Like, you are destroying me, the things that you're doing to me and what I have to go through to deal with you. So Molly is just like a tragic character at this point, and she's not having a good time. We do get a lot of like emotional and sort of like somber moments throughout this book, though, because Harry, you know, is communicating with everybody, and they're realizing that Harry's dead, and they're talking to him. Like, he has moments with Murphy when they bring Molly in to sort of like open up her sight and see if it's actually him. And of course, Harry, being a dick, immediately just goes into like an Obi-Wan voice when he meets Molly, because of course he does. What else would he do as a ghost? But you get a lot of people dealing with Harry being gone, and, you know, Will being one of them. You've got Murphy and Molly and the rest of the Carpenters. Like, Daniel gets involved in this book because he has to. You get, you know, Butters involved. You get just this whole cast. You know, Sonya's back and being a pervert as always. I really like too, though, is when you learn that when you learn that Molly is basically being a vigilante, and she comes to this, you know, meeting or whatever that Murphy called together. She's just like in rags and has like a cane, and Murphy tells her that she looks like a homeless scarecrow and she smells like a gutter. This book just, it had so many emotional moments and good character background information. Like, you spend a lot of time learning about Harry and Elaine when they were younger, and when they were, you know, under Justin and what he was trying to do to them, and Harry kind of coming to terms with what he ended up having to do and killing Justin. And just there's so many emotional beats in this book that I wasn't really expecting, and some of it was honestly tough. Like, the end of Changes was really emotional and impactful, just with everybody involved. And then for this book, just dealing with everything that happened and seeing what all these characters meant to Harry and what Harry meant to them, it was just like, it was much more emotional than I was expecting. And to add, of course, to Molly's terrible situation, she is being trained by Harry's godmother, which is probably good for her, but also the worst, because you cannot trust these Fae whatsoever, especially as, you know, as we learn at the end, when Harry thought he had gotten, you know, out of this, he thought he had tricked Mab, and sure enough, at the end of the book, he wakes up in Mab's sweet arms, her sweet, gigantic, whatever, 6 foot plus fairy terrifying demon arms, when she's like, oh, my Winter Knight, of course, like, you didn't escape me, like, you're not as smart as you think you are. And then he does lay down the line, though. He's like, look, I'm gonna be your Winter Knight, and I'll be the best one ever, but I'm doing it on my terms. He was like, you're not gonna hurt anybody close to me because you need me, and I know that you run this. I will happily kill people for you, but I'm gonna do it my way. So Harry is still the Winter Knight, so we'll see what happens. I feel like that's why Cold Days is called Cold Days. We'll see what happens. But Mab, I don't think Mab quite understands who she's messing with. We do also learn that the swords The swords of the Holy Cross are basically ancient relics. So yeah, Amarachius is Excalibur, Esperachius is Durandal, and Fidelicius is Kusanagi. I always mix up Fidelicius and Esperachius. And then you of course have these, crazy moments with basically evil Bob. You've got Corpse Taker going inside Molly and inside Butters. Speaking of Butters, you have this great moment where he's pretending to be a warden, and it's hilarious. And then he just beats the hell out of somebody. It was great. I need to see Butters with a sword, because he had some strength hidden in there that I didn't know about. There was also this really weird but kind of cool dream sequence with Molly where she's younger, and then it's her imagination. There's all these different versions of her, and they're basically on the bridge of the Enterprise. It was a whole wacky sort of out there scene, but it was great, of course, because these different Mollys interacting with Harry, and everybody kind of be like, what the hell is happening? And me being like, what the hell is happening? There's a lot of weird stuff, but it was fun. One of the last things, I'm sure there's going to be stuff that I miss or that I don't remember. I mean, I love the book. Harry's kind of a dick. I still root for him. I love him as a character, but he's kind of a dick, man. Basically doing what he did to Susan at the end of Changes, and basically making her go berserk and become full vampire, and then killing her to save Maggie, and then everything that he's put Molly through, just he's kind of a dick. Overall though, man, I mean, I thought this book was great. It wasn't my favorite Dresden book, but it's definitely up there. Pretty much everything since Deadbeat has been fantastic, and getting better and better and better. Obviously Changes, it's going to be hard to top Changes. Ghost Story is definitely going to be up there with, Proving Guilty and other ones that I really love, White Knight, etc. But I'm really looking forward to Cold Days. It's, I think, easily the biggest book, simply because Battleground and Peace Talks are split, but Cold Days is a chonker. But I fly through these books. I think I read Ghost Story in 2.5 days or something. It was insane. But they're so easy to read, and they fly by. Even this, slower story where the plot wasn't necessarily the plot, or the villain wasn't necessarily the most interesting, but everything around it was so good. I love these books. They're great. And now we get to see what happens with Harry actually functioning as, Mab's Winter Knight. So we shall see where we go from here. Good book. Dresden's awesome. Can't wait to read more. So that'll do it for now, guys. Until next time.